Is the idea of asylum a Western value? I believe yes. We have to defend it. How do we defend it? Fixing our flaw. If we say a culture is inferior, that may also imply that they're incapable of having the right ideas how to come in or how to fix the problem. But the problem can be fixed on our side, the superior countries, and that is the process needs to be changed. And we should be able to define what needs to be done and then do something to get it done. And I do completely support Hilal or Lala, sorry, because she is right. What she describes is that our culture needs to say, hey, we enforce our rules on you. And if you don't follow these rules, then you're out. But that we haven't done that. So we have created the problem by not enforcing our own rules. So we have two problems now. A, change the rules for the new ones. And B, create rules and a way how to deal with the existing problem. But go and say like Armin, oh, none of the Muslim people should come in here. That, I think, is allowing the ideology of the other side to influence your mind and reject one of your own value, namely that it's a human right to seek asylum, and it's a human civilized duty to accept asylum from those who really need it. These are my 2 points.
Okay. Any rebuttals to that?
Yeah, I mean, when you say asylum is a Western value, we didn't argue against asylum. We just wanted to do it better. And one way to do it better is to not allow ideas that makes us country weaker so that we won't be able to afford a better process for the asylum process. I mean, no, I don't think anybody here argued against the asylum process, but you have to be selective. We're talking about being selective, not about ending the asylum process. You say that it's inferior, but it can be fixed from our side. Why should that be Western countries' responsibility to fix other countries' problems? Every nation state is responsible to its own people, to its own citizens. Why is it that when they fuck up and you're doing things right, now you also have to fix their problems for it? These things cost money. These things take resources. You're not responsible for them. They're responsible for themselves. And then when you say Western values is that they have the right to seek asylum, they do have the right to seek asylum. I'm not seeing the second part that you're adding to it anywhere among Western values. You seem to suggest that if we don't give everybody that is seeking asylum, if we don't give it to them, that we are becoming more like them. I'm pretty sure our problem with Islamic values I'm pretty sure our problem with Islamic values is not the rejection of asylum seekers. So no, don't worry, we're not going to become like them. We're going to become more like them if we allow more of them inside. That's how we become like them.
May I rebuttal that?
Yes, sir. 1 minute.
If you accept the right of seeking asylum, you imply that those who comply to your criteria will get asylum. So you cannot say, oh, you have the right to asylum, but we don't grant it anyway because we don't like your culture. In that moment, you generalize the culture over the individual. And then you contradict your own value to say that you have the right to asylum because that becomes just an empty word. Either a value is a value, then I have the duty and the responsibility to defend that value. And the right to seek asylum implies that we will give asylum to those ones who are really in danger. If you say, oh, I don't have to take care about their shit, well, I'm sorry, then all the people who traveled the Mediterranean and then got murdered in Germany, yeah, that's your problem. You're Germans. It's your German problem. The fact that you're Jewish, it doesn't play a role. So no, I can't let that stand. You are with the argument you make. You are basically saying it's a paper tiger. We don't want to do that. It's just a lip service. And if we do that, then we give up our own values.
Can I rebuttal him?
I want to say something as well.
Can I say something for 2 seconds? As a Jew, I
just a moment. You guys
ever give Jews asylum ever again.
It is too many people wants to talk at the same time. It means that what we're talking about is interesting, but just a moment.
So he was directed
let's
at me. So let me respond to it fast. Okay. So first
let's
of all,
take 1 minute Armin rebuttal.
all right. So first of all, no, there is no implication. If we acknowledge that people have the right to seek asylum, that does not at all imply that you have to give them asylum. It does not imply that at all. And then you could absolutely say, if somebody has the right to seek asylum, we could look at them and say, like, you don't like your culture, and you have completely, absolutely, it doesn't contradict Western values if you say, like, yeah, we don't like your culture, so we're not going to allow you here. Where are you connecting these? Just because you claim it doesn't mean that one is implying the other one. There is no, that duty does not exist. And again, we're not, if you don't like a certain culture from people from a certain society, if you don't accept people from that society, you're
Final
not
point.
generalizing. You're admitting that even if there are some people there that don't have that inferior culture, I am incapable right now with my resources. I am incapable of separating from you guys, and it's not worth me spending a lot of resources to figure out who's who. And I'm going to prioritize. Every nation state has the right to prioritize its own citizens, not only the right, but also the duty to prioritize protecting its own citizens.
You misquoted me. I didn't say everyone. I said it. The right. The if you say I accept the right for people to seek asylum, then I have the duty to accept them under the rules I have defined when I will accept asylum seekers. If not, the whole concept is a lie, and we can get rid of it and let them die.
I heard you clearly, and I just demonstrated how does that the implication is not there. That's what I said. I heard you completely clearly, and that implication is not there.
Can I say something, please? Why is this talk about asylum seekers? The reason you're getting the far right rising in Europe is not because of asylum seekers, it's because of mass legal immigration. The issue of asylum is irrelevant. It's not the issue.
There is mass migration comes in the form of asylum seekers.
No,
A lot of them.
Yeah. There's 1 million legal, 100 requested asylum in 2024. So the
Depends on the year, because after Syria, like there was years that the asylum seekers were in hundreds of thousands. So it depends on what year.
Even then, if you look at the numbers, the largest number always in the UK, I just looked at the stats, is always legal migration.
We're talking about all of them. This is why I listed them. We're against all of the people who are seeking asylum. But the reason why we're talking about asylum is because people keep justifying mass migration by talking about how people have.
That's
the
what
right
I'm
to
saying. It's
asylum.
irrelevant. Why is he talking about it?
It is not irrelevant,
point is
because
clear.
like when Syria, when we had the Arab Spring and we had the chaos in Syria, that was very relevant. But also we are looking at all of them. We're looking at asylum seekers. We're also looking at illegal migration and also legal migration from Islamic countries in mass. We're looking at all of them. But yet the reason all of them are
I've been
important, and I
watching.
think
I've been watching.
all of them should stop from Islamic countries.
I've been watching
Sorry,
All right.
the right
Just
in,
I don't
in
want
the
to
West.
I don't want to turn it I don't want to turn it to to debate of you and Armin. We have a pretty long list. Rebuttal wise, we had Hila right now with a rebuttal. Hila, 1 minute.
I just think we're cycling to the same point, and maybe we can expand this talk from both sides to the deeper level. Let's say you're right. So, for example, okay, let's say I bring people in, but with no exam or no conditions, but then I want to put them in a school that they will teach them how to. So also this is dangerous as well. So what do I do with them? I just let them go? It's dangerous. But for the other example is like, okay, I just give 5% of whatever my population could be foreigners and refugees, and the rest of if my country, my population wants it, I can politically help the country that is in danger. Not everything have to be so dramatic. That's it.
Okay. And I think that's it with rebuttals for this for now. And let's move on to, we had Cat Lady. You here?
Yes, I'm here, but skip my turn.
Oh.
For now.
Dipin Raj. Dipin? You here, bud? All right. Work on your audio. We can't hear you. Anyway, I'll keep you on the list. And Oscar.
Oh yeah, Mossad. You said a statement about that the immigration is increasing, like the far right, and that be careful with what you add to your soup because you might get like a soup that you don't like or something like that. But I think that the U.S. prior to immigration had already had like many like difficulties, don't you think? Like the slavery, the KKK, a lot of the things that problems that the U.S. has had before. It is not necessarily the result of immigration. I mean, obviously these things, in political discourse around immigration heightened the emotions of many people. But do you think that all those things in the far right and all that is because of immigration? And do you think, like, what do you think about that?
Can you repeat the last two sentences?
What does he mean exactly by immigrants ruin the soup that is the US or countries? What do you mean exactly that immigration from countries like Hispanic America would ruin, or immigration from anywhere would ruin the culture or the place of a certain country like the US?
I can answer quickly. I didn't say ruin, change. I said change. And make it unrecognizable. And it all depends on numbers and also the history of the place and so on. I don't know in America, but what I do see in America is a massive rise of far right. And I think it's a reaction to loose immigration controls. Because yes, you had all sorts of hate and stuff, but you're amplifying them. You're giving them, you're adding fuel to the fire, as they say.
And I never seen a cholo dude just blow up a bus. Just saying.
That's true.
So now, if we don't have anything else, this is Samantha, then Karen, then Tom, then Andre.
I have to
I
say,
raised my hand too.
Yeah.
what Armin said about the fact that people are thinking about in terms of fairness, and then when it's like, we need to be thinking more survival than fairness, and like what he said about, like the plane, that is so perfect and amazing. Like, who's ever editing this needs to clip that. If you want a very strong, like, short video that would be very powerful, repeat that, but if you could also give those generalizations that I gave, like, the 2 generalizations I gave earlier about, examples of times where people might need to make a generalization, that would be a very good video. Think about when it comes to people applying for asylum, just imagine for a second someone is like, let's say an Israeli for a second, is like going to another country and saying like, my life is in danger here, I need asylum. And like saying this to another country and it's like an Israeli citizen. If someone's applying for asylum, that means the person, their life is in danger because they fucked up somehow or the country fucked up somehow. Like one or the other, like maybe both fucked up, but like at least one of the two fucked up. Like either the country fucked up or the person fucked up. Like so my attitude is like, if the person fucked up, obviously you don't want to give them asylum. If the country fucked up, then like, you know, either the society is fucked up and you don't want to take mass immigration. So like, or the government is fucked up and you don't want to really like have ties to this government. So like, if we're taking asylum seekers from a country and like, it's not the person's fault, the person's not who fucked up, it's the country that fucked up, that should mean one of two things. The society's sufficiently fucked up to the point where we don't want mass immigration from that country, or like the government is sufficiently fucked up to the point where we shouldn't really be having a relationship with that government.
Final point.
And that kind of is my point.
Let's wrap it up. Okay. Thank you. And so I have a small rebuttal about what you said. It's like a correction. It's for you and Andre both. I mean, I think that when you talk about these things, you cannot discuss those things when you're coming from the premise that you have a 100% success system. Both you and Andre are talking as if you had a 100 success system that you can utilize, and it's not like this. And when they have in Pakistan, let's say 40% rape, so you don't have a system to check it properly, and it's gonna
Yeah.
link in. So yeah,
How many of those immigrants, though, from Pakistan were, like, asylum seekers who they, like, looked through it and it was, like, a genuine, like, "Oh, this person, if we send them back, is gonna, like," has proof that if we send them back, they're gonna right away get killed for, an alleged blasphemy thing or something.
yeah, yeah.
'Cause I would bet you most of the people who are were let in through asylum, they didn't have some, like, very clear hardcore evidence that, like, if they were ever to show up in Pakistan again, they would very likely just get murdered on the spot.
Yeah, yeah, and also I believe that the country doesn't have the duty to educate people not to rape and explode. I don't believe that. Okay, so we have I'm sorry, we have Karen. Karen,
The country that is going to accept refugees, they have to do their homework. And that's why it takes time. And it takes time to accept immigrants. You can wait for years to immigrate to Canada. At least I've heard. What I don't understand is how this all got so out of control. We accepted 25,000 Syrians back in, I don't remember, 2015 or something. And I remember at the time thinking that's not very many when you consider how many Germany is taking in or England. But I guess maybe Canada was more cautious. And I don't know how this all got out of control. That's my question.
how did it get out of control? Do we want to cover this now or later, Almin?
Well, I mean, I don't know how it got out of control, so I don't have an answer. That's a good question, though. Somebody needs to look into
But I
that.
mean, immigrant countries have systems in place, protocols. They vet
Oh,
people. They should, I mean, they're vetting potential immigrants. That's what takes time to let people into your country. So, how did that all go to hell?
okay. So this evidence, a demographic collapse. The countries that are accepting this many migrants, they just don't. They're not having enough babies, and they need a workforce. So they're just loosening up their criteria because of how much population they need to be able to do the work. So that's what. But again, they should have done that on certain countries. Like we already have enough poor countries that would be very eager to come to Canada, for example, who are not Islamic. You could have just, brought more people from Philippines, Vietnam, or other places that are not Islamic and would have been able to come and fill in the gap. But the reason why they got all of a sudden remove the criteria was because of the population. As societies get richer, they have less babies, and the workforce needs babies. They need a working population.
So the short answer is the Democrats is
Actually,
cheaper
that's
labor.
another good point. Wait, you said Democrats. Oh my God. Sorry. Another, now that I think about it, another major factor is because leftists notice that the more they allow people in and make citizens, they tend to vote for them. Right. So they were like, okay, we'll bring more people that vote for us. So it just worked out very well for them. So this is something that the right cannot do. This is why the right constantly was like, hey, people have more babies, but they don't let in the population. They cannot open the borders. So this is a cheat code for leftist parties to stay in power.
All right. Can I jump back to Cat Lady? She has a point
Yep.
now. She raised her hand. Okay, Cat Lady.
Yes, about, I'm not talking about reasons, but like factors that cause this. For example, in Europe, but not only, there is very powerful courts and organizations. What's the word? A body of ruling powers. uh,
Organization?
like the EU Court of Justice or Court of Human Rights, and they are actually forcing the countries to do what they want. They force the countries to not deport, to take in people and much really extreme stuff. And if they don't do what they're told, they have sanctions like Hungary. It's a big, big issue. That's also one point.
Okay.
Army, I would like to rebuttal you here quick. First of all, the left and the right is already a categorization to ostracize people, for example, me. So I don't agree to the things you said there anyway. Second, the left didn't make the rules who allowed them to be, who are insufficient to deal with immigration and with follow-up on immigration. These rules existed. The failure lies on the countries who have a value and are not willing to define how they will support that. And that's us. There we can do something. We can't do anything about ideologies in other countries or situations in other countries. What we can do is define what is our value. If we support this value and we allow people in to take asylum, how will we follow up for that? If we allow immigration, what are the conditions? How do we follow up on that? And obviously, we have failed in the follow-up. This is where we can do something, right? Now, to assume that the leftists just want to have Muslims come in so that they vote for them, that's a conspiracy theory, and that should be beneath you, right? And it's also not helpful because it's not going to find a solution. I'm interested to find common ground with people, even if they have different political views than me, to find what can we concrete do to counteract anti-Semitism, but also to control the influx of populations to maintain fundamental Western values of which you mentioned them, right? What our civilization is. To ostracize groups may not be the right thing. To generalize all of them are like that may not be the right thing. I don't know, yes or no, but we have to find rules to define that. And I would really be interested what rules can be set and how can we support them and how can we make them political and a legal reality in order to not betray our own values and at the same time not allow these values to be used against us.
So first of all, there is actually ample evidence. There's more than enough evidence that leftist parties like are pro-migration, and because migrants generally vote left, because the leftists let them in. Like this has been established. Like if you don't know this, then I have like I could go through hours of cases after evidence that this has been demonstrated. So I don't know. Migrants historically vote for leftist parties in Western countries, and Western and leftist parties have noticed that, and because they let them in, and they also vote for the when they come in, they vote for the parties that have welcomed them. I didn't even say Muslims. I said I was careful. I say most migrations, even from non-Islamic countries. This has been like I could go through a huge list of evidence to demonstrate this. I mean, the fact that people don't know this is very alarming. So
Rebuttal,
I'm
20
gonna.
seconds.
So no, I'm gonna go to. Is it my turn after Andrew? Because I have my own points.
It's Tom turns, but if you're
Okay,
on the
Tom. Yeah,
way,
Tom. I'll give you my other points after Tom. Then.
Tom, please.
Okay, I can speak after you.
No, go
Can I
ahead.
rebuttal
Because
Army in here?
I mean, your rebuttal to me is like, oh, this is not true. Like just
No,
because you're
my
saying it's
rebuttal
not
to
true,
you is that what you say is not correct. A
that's not a,
reason they
that's
do
not a.
that, but
Hmm.
if the parties, you assume their reason or you state their reason was to let them in that they get voted for. But it's just as well true that, or not true, that may not be true at all. It may be the reason they left people in because they believed in the right of asylum and didn't define it well enough. That's why they left also the wrong people in. Just that they let people in or that they're pro immigration or pro asylum doesn't mean they do that so that they get power. They might that because they support their values.
Yeah, that's okay. So I'm not. So you don't know how memes work, right? So you don't know how systems work. We're not talking necessarily about the intentions of individuals. When two things are supporting each other, they just grow with each other. So if I'm talking about systems, I'm not even talking about individuals, right? But you have systems and institutions and values that encourages migration, and then when you have more migration that encourages those systems, the growth of those systems, then they continue to is what is it called in biology when two different species are basically working with each other? I think Nail Bunny could tell me what that is. Symbiosis. This is they have a symbiotic relationship with each other, right? And when you talk about intentions, I'm not talking about individuals. I'm talking about systems. If migration feeds into leftist parties, and the leftist parties vote for more positive migration, then both of these will, in evolution of like living animals, living creatures, like the intentionality is like metaphorical. Even if it's not there, the system works in a way as if the intention is there. But we're not talking about the agendas of individual. Most politicians' agendas and is mostly based on self-interest, not the systems that they're working. But leftist parties will encourage more migration, and migration helps the growth of leftist parties. And this has been documented, and we have enough evidence to be able to demonstrate this.
Okay. Are we moving on? I think so.
Oh, actually, I have intention of individuals as well. So, for example, in the UK, Andrew Nedder in 2019 wrote about. He wrote an article stating that Labour Party's mass migration policy was deliberate. He claimed that the goal was to rub the right's nose in diversity and build a multicultural society that would permanently alienate the Conservative Party. Then we have the in 2002 in USA, we had the emerging Democratic majority. Political strategist John Judas and Rudy published a famous book arguing that demographic change, especially the growth of Latino and Asia populations, would create permanent progressive majority for the Democratic Party. This theory was widely adopted by the Democratic strategists for 2 decades. And then we have historical voting statistics. The USA. Okay, I keep going like this. This is a huge list. So actually, we have intentionality proven by individuals as well, and by political strategists and democratic parties and other leftist parties all across Western civilization. So it's interesting. I didn't actually know that we have this much proof. I know we had proof, so I just learned something.
The elderly,
Yeah,
I mean,
but to be fair, he wrote you in the chat. He wrote you in the chat, and he's kind of right that because one does claim that a conspiracy does not make it true. So if you treat it as individuals, basically, that's what he says.
This theory was widely adopted by democratic strategists for 2 decades. Did he not hear that part?
For 2 decades, Democratic affiliates from the party itself, representatives.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not the
The
individual anymore.
strategists. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So Andre, it's a way that you speak about these countries, like they must find a way to accept these migrants and be okay with it. Well, no, it's how I imagined that you're talking about them. It's like an asylum seeker is going to the Western countries and was like, "Hey, you're a Western country. You should and have a duty to take me in." No, it's more like they're going there and be like, "I need help. Please, if you're generous enough, let me in." And it's on them to accept or deny you. No one has
Okay.
the right in any country. There are tons of countries that have, many bright people that are working on them, and they have not find a way to do that. So it's not that easy. And there are many countries. So, and it's just, you should just compare the Eastern to Western European countries. The Eastern ones are not accepting mass migrants as they saw what happened to the Western European countries. You should just check how safe they are and compare the was saying that there are many Eastern European countries that did not accept such huge numbers of asylum seekers, and safety-wise, economy-wise, and mainly anything, they are doing much more better than the countries, Western countries that they did, and you just have to compare them.
Thank you, Tom. Armin.
Okay. So All right. The idea that we could follow them around, we could train them, we could tell them the better ways of doing things. We could tell them, like, hey, maybe don't beat women. Hey, maybe don't have sex with children. Hey, maybe don't try to wage jihad on us. Like, so the issue with that is, first of all, there's no way to see who's lying, who's not lying. Like, hey, can you respect, for example, maybe not be for killing gay people? Like, sure, I could just say that, and I can never. There's no way to check for me whether or not this is true or not. I mean, guys, I don't know if you know, there are many Muslims who convert to Christianity, fake convert, just to be able to file for asylum. So these are the things that you need to be worried about. But even if you can't do that, why should I do that? Like, why bring people with shitty ideas and then make them better using my taxpayers resources, my country's resources, my citizens wealth, to make up for the failures of other countries? Like, why should I could do that. I could bring people with backward beliefs and try to make them better, or I could just bring better people. How about I don't spend all the countries, a lot of the country's wealth on trying to improve people? I could just bring people. I mean, you should, as a country, if you're competing with other countries, you should try to brain drain other countries, not to bring their worst and then try to make them better. And in a competitive, if you're being competitive, you should be trying to steal their best, not to bring their worst. And then, because if you're in a competitive mode, you have to be like, okay, they trained those people and they made them the best. Now I bring them here without actually spending on educating them. They spent on education and I get the benefit. That's how you compete. You don't go bring their worst and then spend money and resources on trying to make them average at least, right? So that's what I think. That doesn't make any sense, right? Actually, United States became one of the reasons why United States is such a great country, is because it did brain drain on so many other countries, right? Also, Musad, I looked at the stats actually. So I think you were looking at UK numbers, and that's why you saw so many the asylum seekers with such a low percentage. Because I looked at the EU numbers, and asylum seekers in the EU are 20 to 23% of non-EU migrants entering the EU. So in 2023, that was 1.1 million people, and in 2024, that was 900,000 people.
No, I
He
So
said
confirmed.
I said
He con-
UK.
so
he confirms.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I
those
know.
are correct.
Yeah. So for UK, you're right, it's 7 to 9%. But if we're talking about Western countries, then we should be worried about asylum seekers, because for the EU as a whole, it's
Fair
like
enough. Yes.
20%. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Samantha. Samantha?
Sorry. Yeah. Okay. So what was I going to say? I also just wanted to like note the thing to keep in mind is I've heard this said before, religion freezes culture. So like cultures that have like, are very religious and have like their, cultural, like problematic cultural issues that are systemic, and they're mixing it in with religion, it's going to be very difficult to like change the culture in those societies. Very difficult because it's now mixed it because religion acts as like a freezing agent, so it's going to be very difficult to like get them to move and budge. And another thing to also keep in mind is like because in the West, a lot of people are becoming like very secular and a-religious, and something needs to fill that void. What ends up filling that void for a lot of people is politics. Politics kind of so to some extent politics start acting like a freezing agent in terms of people's thinking when like they start holding certain political beliefs. So the problem with like the leftists, especially like communism is a godless religion. So the problem is when they start having certain political beliefs, it's going to be very difficult to get them to change opinion and to budge. That needs to be kept in mind at all levels because if you have a lot of leftists, theoretically, if you had a very strict policy about deporting people who don't behave, you could be fine taking in a certain number of asylum seekers. But if you have a country that psychologically you're gonna have too many people shutting down and breaking down into chaos if you try to deport people, then you have to be stricter with who you let in.
All right. Can I rebuttal her opening statement? Okay. So religion sticks the culture and societies in place and time. What place and what time? Did the church ever repress Galileo Galilei and all that stories? Yes, it happened. Do they do it anymore? No. Do the synagogue oppresses science? They did before. Do they do it now? No. Do Islam do that? Yes. I ended my rebuttal.
By freezing, it doesn't mean like completely frozen for all time, but it adds an inertia to it. It does make it harder, not impossible.
My claim is that religion is some sort of a subculture, and in Judeo-Christian subculture, you can progress further, and in Islam, it's much, much harder for you. You have Albania,
Like,
but they
let
don't.
me give you an
They're much.
example. I grew up with an very clear understanding of like, hey, we need these walls in between the West Bank and Gaza because there's a lot of Arabs in the West Bank and Gaza who, if they can get in, are going to blow themselves up. Okay. So, like, I
Mhm.
was good on that. I understood that very clearly growing up my whole life. But, getting too involved in like very far left activism, and it's like the things I could understand about the Arabs in Gaza and the West Bank I could not extend to, like, Muslims in general until I had been out of a communist cult for, like, at least a good 2 years. Because, like, communism is a godless religion, and it freezes you into, like, you can't think certain things is problematic, so if I hadn't had a thought before getting involved, I can't, like, get to that thought very easily.
Oh, okay. Anybody else on that particular issue, or we move on?
Is it
Move
my
on
turn
because I want to
anymore?
get to my point.
You want to get to your point. Fine. Then we
Okay.
have Mossad, then Van Hendrik, Robert, Andre, Armin.
Well, Andre says what we need to do is test them and ask them. I mean, Armin already addressed this. But if Andre is so good at re-educating everyone, then how come there's still racists in Germany? I think he lives in Germany, if I'm not wrong, or wherever he lives. Have you not managed to eradicate racists in your society yet? How are you going to deal with millions of people who come from cultures where that is the norm, where 99% are anti-Semitic? What you will end up doing with your ideas is making Germany Jew-free, like the Nazi dream. You're helping it come true. Jonathan Haidt did research about why people on the left and right of politics, very intelligent people, seem to be sane, cannot agree about things. And he did massive research, which was funded by the Obama campaign. But anyway, he found that he could predict which way someone will vote by simply asking them questions about how much they care about people they don't know. So people that vote Democrat tend to care more about people they don't know than people they do know. So they have more empathy for strangers than to people in their own community, where people who vote to the right, the opposite. And that was a very, very good predictor. He found many other patterns that made him revalue everything he understood about society and politics. He's a professor in New York University, Jonathan Haidt. Highly recommended, whichever side you are on politics, it really helps you understand the other side.
Okay, just to be the name that you said is Jonathan Wright or Jonathan Haidt?
Height, I'll write it down as well.
Hey,
DT.
Okay, great. So now we have Van Hendrik.
Okay, I'll make 2 points. First is a point about the left-wing immigration thing, and then I'll want to ask a question to Armin about who the ban. So first with the left-wing thing, there might be a difference between America and Europe. So at least here in Europe, at least in the Netherlands, it was actually the right wing that started the immigration because right after World War II, everything was destroyed. People wanted to be rebuilt, but a lot of people didn't want to do the dirty work themselves. So then they brought in people from Greece, also people from Turkey and Morocco. And some people from Greece, they went back, but then like people from Morocco and Turkey, they realized like, oh, it's actually pretty nice here. And only then, when they started to stay a little bit, then it is true that the left wing parties saw like, oh, these people are doing manual labor. We're left wing parties, so we should try and convince these people. So, but at least here in the Netherlands, the start was actually right wing parties that led the immigration in. Now, for my question to Armin, so
What year was that?
this was like after the World War, the Second World War.
Oh my God, you're talking
Yeah.
about ancient times. I'm talking
No,
about
well,
now.
yeah, no, but it was like a slow, at least in the Netherlands, that's sort of where it all started. Yeah, well, and I think in Europe, it's also a lot, like the later years, it's also a lot with colonies, of course, partly with migration. But there I've made my point. So you say we want to ban people from like the countries like with Islamic values. The thing is, oftentimes you didn't say the word, but oftentimes people talk about a Muslim ban. Now I already know that in the second chamber, if people are going to talk about a Muslim ban, I don't think that's going to fly. So what would be better? Like, should you call it a Muslim ban, or should you call it? We're going to make a ban against people from illiberal countries, and that just so happens to be a lot of Muslim countries.
Yeah, you could talk to the marketing department regarding how to sell it.
But that's also
Right,
like a
so-
fundamentally different law, right? Because then you have to make categories for what's a
Yeah, you could include
liberal
some
country.
non-Islamic countries, so to just to make sure you could pass this, right? So whatever you need to name
Sure.
it, and whatever other non-Islamic countries you should need to include to make sure this gets passed.
What, like
Just do that,
Venezuela?
right?
I'm like, you're gonna
Yeah,
have
but there
so
you
much.
go.
You're gonna
Fantastic,
have so much trouble
fantastic.
if you try to include Venezuela on that. Oh my
Oh,
God!
no, actually, no, not Venezuela. Never going. So I don't know. We could add Russia. I don't know. You add North Korea. No, North Korea. We could actually. No.
But
The problem with a lot of these shitty countries, other non-Islamic shitty countries, is that it's actually easier to distinguish between, because we're not talking about an ideology that has infected the people. We're talking mostly about a bad state, right? So it's easier to this. Like for example, if someone running away from North Korea, giving them asylum, you're not going to get in trouble with that, right? Like that guy is not going to cause you trouble. It's like the North Korean state that's going to cause you trouble, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know
One
which
thing,
country to include, but you could
yeah.
pick one. Like, yeah, go on.
The thing is, one thing just with the PR, like PR, it doesn't strike me quite right because it's a little bit more with PR where, like, often the argument is like, "Oh, you're bigoted against Muslims," and then the argument is like, "No, I'm not bigoted against Muslims. I'm against Islam."
How about you
Yeah.
just look? How about this? You just say like we're looking at statistics, and from all the people, whoever has the crime rate that is higher than their percentage of their population, from those countries, we're not going to allow anyone in. How about that?
I think that's gonna because would we do that? Like, how far are you gonna take that principle to any other like legal realm? Like, men commit
No,
most of the crimes, right? So could you then discriminate men? Say we only want to let women in.
you cannot discriminate against your own citizens, but you can discriminate against people from other countries based on their based on their country of origin. That's allowed. You cannot in Western based on Western countries' values. You know, your own citizens, men and women, you cannot discriminate against them. When they become citizens, you cannot discriminate against them based on their country of origin.
Could you discriminate potential citizens? So like people who want to immigrate, could you discriminate them on their
Yeah,
gender? You think?
Yes.
yeah. I
20
think I
seconds.
think you can. I think given that like you could be saying you could be more, because you know men from young men in fighting ages are more of a concern than women. So yeah, I think you should be able to do that.
All right.
But when women come here, they might not be dangerous themselves, but they start giving birth to people who end up being dangerous. So
Or
I don't
just
know if
only
you
let
wanted
women
to.
in, and then it's fine.
Both of them are dangerous. Just discriminate against them based on country of origin. Anyways, we need to go to other people.
Okay. So we drifted up a little bit, but we had a time plus rebuttal and rebuttal, so it ended up a little bit over 5.5 minutes. But
I
so
think having ex-Muslims from like Islamic countries though is just
Samantha,
infallible.
and you really need to go through the list. I will add you just now, and now we have Robert, then Andre, Armin, and Samantha. Robert? He's gone?
Seems like it.
Okay. So, Andre, please.
First, personal to Mossad. If you say, if Andre is so smart, that's polemic, not useful, right? Second, yes, we can discuss if the left wings have an interest on that. I would say, well, the timeline don't align well. Naturalization takes a long time before they vote. Immigration populations don't stay stable in what they vote for. For example, Latinos, who are a lot of them immigrants, voted for the right-wing party and made Trump to come to power twice. So that doesn't jam. The left party does support working class. Many immigrants are working class. Actually, in Germany, the big part of Muslim population is Turkish. The Turks was brought in as laborers. So that was right-wing politics, as the gentleman from the Netherlands said. So I think that just doesn't really jam, but I think it's not helpful. We absolutely agree on one point. Immigration and asylum seeking has to be regulated, and the regulations have to be followed through with. We have the laws, but the laws are not been applied, and that's the problem. And I think on that we could agree.
Almin.
Yeah, this actually responds to something that you said. As you were talking about how people from Islamic countries are more likely to come here and blow up a bus or something, and compared to any other population. What I want to pay attention to is that blowing up a bus or any act of terror is actually the tip of the iceberg. And that's what people see, and they don't see the rest when you're bringing in people from Islamic countries, right? Because for every one person that will stab you or abuse a child or blow up a bus, right, there is there's thousands of people who might not do that, but they would agree with that. And there are
They would
even bigger
cheer.
number of people, they would cheer that, and they're now in your country, right? And I mean, if they are more likely to blow up a bus, then think about the ones who are not blowing up the bus. And if they have values that are incompatible with you, because I always say the most dangerous thing a Muslim does in Western countries is not a terrorist attack. The most dangerous thing a Muslim does in Islamic countries is vote, right? And a lot of people don't see that as a threat. But imagine a huge number of people who might not ever blow up a bus, but sympathize with that, and now they're voting. And I think that sort of invasion is so much more dangerous than a military invasion because you don't see it coming. And because no matter how powerful your military is, they are now getting a piece of that military. Because by changing the demographic and naturalizing them and giving them the right to vote, they eventually will vote in the politicians that has control over that military. And that what you see in the news is the grooming gangs. Well, I mean, you used to actually not see that for a very long time. Now maybe you might not see that either, but that's what gets the attention. You see the grooming gangs, you see the explosions, you see the stabbing, but you don't see where the bigger concern should be, is that your values and the institutions and all the beliefs that made your country superior, the people who failed, the people who have inferior countries, the people who you are superior to, are now you're opening the door to them to come and decide how you run your country. And not only their inferior values is going to affect you in so many different ways, especially economically, and people are bored to talk about economics, but I think that's actually the key metric in everything. But they also would vote in to let more of their
Final
people
point.
inside so that they could. Yeah, the concern is that now that they have more control over the laws, they're also more likely to allow more people like them inside. And this is just to change the demographic even more, to change the laws even more, to also then allow more people in.